What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to another D.B.A. podcast. That's right, we are back with another podcast episode. Now, it has been a while since I've done a podcast, and the reason why is because, to be honest with you guys, just really haven't had anything to talk about. But I don't know if it's because I've gotten back into running since my sparring trifecta race, and I'm feeling a little bit better, but my creative juices have been flowing, and I've just been thinking about a lot of different topics and ideas that I kind of want to share with you guys and talk about with you guys. So that's why we're doing a podcast, and I got a good amount of ideas for upcoming podcasts that I could kind of talk about. So you guys have heard me say it before, that as you go through life, you have certain roles. So I figured I would do like a series on all the roles that you have in your life and all the roles that I have in my life, and how to live those roles not the average way. Because obviously this podcast is all geared towards not having that average mindset, not listening to the voice of average that everybody has. I don't care who you are, even successful people that you would consider someone great, they all have that voice of average. They just have ways that they deal with it. I deal with that voice on a daily basis. So we're going to kind of talk about that. Like I said, when it comes to you and your life and how you're living your life, you have roles. How you go about your everyday and how you live out those roles will determine whether you're considered the average X, whatever it is, like average dad, average mom, average teacher, average whatever role you is, or if you will stand out and people, when they see you, they will refer to you as, that's not your average, whatever it may be, right? So what we're going to talk about is, first thing you got to do is you got to identify your roles. Now, depending on what stage you are in your life, you have different roles. I've had many roles in my life. My very first role I was ever given was obviously son, because I came into the world. So I was a son, I was a child, I was a brother, I was a cousin, I was a nephew at one point, and that's like the early stages of your life. That's what everybody obviously is. And then as you go through school and you go through high school and you go through adulthood, like that's one of your roles, is as soon as you turn 18, you're an 18-year-old. And maybe you were your average 18-year-old, or you had a manager at one point, or you were an employee at one point, or you were whatever it may be. Everybody has those roles. I'm not going to go through all of those. My tip for you, though, is to, whatever stage you are in your life, obviously you may be at my current stage, right? Right now I'm 33 years old. You may be at that, or you might be a high school student watching this, and your roles are going to be a little different. First thing you got to do is obviously identify what your roles are right now, every single one of them. Once you have all of them, then you're going to focus on them. So like the point in my life right now, like I said, I'm 33 years old. My main roles that I am focusing on, not saying that obviously I'm still a son, I'm still a brother, I'm still cousin, I'm still nephew, I'm uncle. I have a lot of roles right now. The ones that I focus on and the ones I'm going to be touching on in this series, Know Your Role. So the roles that I currently have in my life right now are husband, father, teacher. I would consider myself a Spartan. I would consider myself a content creator. I would consider myself a person in society, human, right? These are all going to be the roles that I talk on. Now, obviously my number one role right now is husband. So I'm going to be focusing on husband in today's episode. So we're going to be going over some things that obviously I think are very important on how to be considered not your average husband. Now, am I an expert at being a husband? Absolutely not. I will not say I am. I will not claim I am. It is something that I just try to work really hard at every single day to be a very good, if not great, husband. Do I hit it every day? Absolutely not, because I'm not perfect. But I strive to just do what the average husband won't do. That is my goal. So I'm going to be talking about like five key topics that I feel like if you do these things, you can consider yourself not the average husband. And like I said, I'm not an expert on this. Me and Cassie have been married since 2016, so basically 7 years. 7 years this year, right? Oh, 8 years. A little over 7 years we have been married. This year will be 8. So first thing I'm going to talk about is one of the things that I had to learn very early on as being a husband, and you need to know when it comes to your wife your bride, you need to know when to listen and when to solve. So one of the first things I learned early on is when Cassie would come to me and talk to me about her day and any issues she have. I don't know, and I think it is because I think I've heard this before. Men, we like to solve things. There's a time to solve and there's a time to just kind of sit back and listen and let them vent. You need to distinguish, because if you don't distinguish, I had many situations at the beginning of our marriage that Cassie would come to me, have a situation that, whether it be family related, whether it be job related, whether it just be friend related, whatever. She would present it to me. I would listen, boom, and then I would shoot off a way to solve the problem. Well, if they're doing this, why don't you do this? Or you need to go talk to your boss. Like if he's getting mad at you for that, or they're getting mad at you for this, well then why don't you stop? And I would come at it like that, in a sense of like, hey, let's solve the problem. Sometimes though, and when I really realized it is when it was with like her friends. She wasn't looking for me to solve the problem. Chances are, most of the time, she has this answer. I've realized that. Most of the time, Cassie will have the answer. In order to be a good husband, you just got to be able to distinguish when, okay, do you want me to solve this or do you want me to listen? I would say 90% of the time, they're really just looking for you to listen. I've realized when it comes to Cassie, when I see that she is in a stressed out state of mind and she looks like she is concerned, that's when I know, okay, she wants to solve. When she comes in and she's speaking fast and I could tell that she's either irritated or like even sometimes angry, that's when I know she just wants to vent. She wants me to listen, she wants me to acknowledge it and be there for her. But if she looks like she is under stress and she is like looking for help, that's when I will distinguish the two and offer some advice and offer some help. But like I said, it doesn't happen all the time. And if you go in like, oh, I'm here to solve the problem, and you aren't aware that they're just trying to, it could lead to some arguments. And the reason why is if they're talking to you about an issue they're having and they really just want you to listen, and you're telling them this is how you should do it, this is how you will solve it, if they don't want to hear that, it could lead to a different argument. So, tip number one is know when to listen and know when to solve. Second thing you got to do is, and this one has been brought up, I don't know, since the book came out, you got to learn their love language. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with love language, there's a book, it's called like the 5 love languages. You got to learn their love languages. Cassie and I learned that. I think we actually learned it prior to us getting married. So the 5 love languages, number 1 is words of affirmation. That is my love language. So words of affirmation is like saying thank you, praising them in public, telling them how much you love them. Like those are all words of affirmation. Like I really appreciate what you do. So that's my love language. Number 2 is acts of service. So acts of service is like doing stuff for them, like cleaning the house, taking out the trash, putting gas in their car, whatever. Those would be acts of service. So that is number 2. Number 3 is gifts. Gifts is pretty self-explanatory. You like when people buy you stuff. Number 4 is quality time. So you don't need gifts. You don't need, it's just be there for me and take time out of your day. So quality time nowadays probably looks like staying off your phone, turning off the TV, just sitting with the person, holding the person, just, hey, let's go take a walk, let's go onto the beach, whatever. That is quality time. You could be doing stuff, obviously, like you can make a trip, we're gonna go on vacation. That is quality time. And then number 5 is physical touch. So physical touch could be holding, it could be cuddling, it could be sitting next to each other on the couch. So my love language is words of affirmation. So if you don't know your spouse's love language, what happens, and where I made the mistake, is I would give Cassie my love language. So I would always compliment her. I would always say, I appreciate what you do. I would always thank her for things that she did. Now, not saying that you shouldn't do that. Obviously, you should do that. But I would do that expecting her to feel the same way that I would feel when she did it for me. But obviously, it's going to mean more to me because that is my love language, is affirmation. However, that's not Cassie's. Cassie's is more of like quality time and physical touch. So Cassie likes when I hold her when we're sitting on the couch and watching TV. She likes me giving her hugs, like that kind of stuff. Now, that to me is in my love language. So me not knowing that, I wouldn't think to give that to her because that isn't my love language. Not saying it doesn't matter to me. None of these, it's not like I don't want, since my only love language is number 3, gifts. That means I don't like words of affirmation. That means I don't like acts of service. That means I don't like, no, that's not how it works. Obviously, if you're human, chances are you like all of those, but you have one that you favor. So the reason why you have to learn their love language is, like I said, if yours is gifts and you're always giving them gifts, but theirs is words of affirmation or theirs is quality time, it's not going to make sense. And then what will happen is when you give them a gift, thinking you're going to expecting to get this big reaction because it's like, cool, that I would love it if you did that for me, and you don't, that could lead to a whole different set of issues. And that's where we had issues, is I would do something, like I'd praise her, I'd give her acts or words of affirmation, and I'd be like, she's not even like acting the way I would. That's another issue, is if you have these expectations of, I'm going to do something and I expect them to act a certain way and they don't, which they have every right not to because they're not you, that could lead to an issue. So you got to learn their love language, and I think that is the easiest way to eliminate some of those expectations, is by knowing their love language. So if you don't know their love language, you guys got to sit down, you got to figure it out, because that is going to be crucial. And once you know it, I mean, you really need to, like, unless you guys have the same love language, what I realized is you have to be intentional about it. You got to like really like make it a part of your everyday to try and give them their love language. Like, obviously gifts, that's a little bit different. I mean, unless you're a baller, you can't really just be buying them stuff every time. But quality time, you don't have to take trips. Like, you could just come home and make it a point that every day you listen to her talk for 30 days, or you listen to her talk for 30 days. You listen to her talk for like 30 minutes, and when I say listen, you gotta listen. You gotta sit there, you gotta stay off your phone, you gotta make eye contact, you gotta acknowledge, you gotta be able to repeat back what she's saying. That is a key. If your wife says something to you and you can't repeat it back, there's a good chance you were not listening. So you need to always be locked in when she is talking. So make it a mission every single day. Find out their love language, and then try to make it a mission every single day, if not every day, at least once a week, that you give them their love language. So that's tip number 2 for not your average husband. Now, tip number 3, some people may get offended by this, but you got to try and impress her. Like, you gotta date your wife. You gotta act like as if it is when you guys first were trying to date, or you first started dating, and you were like in that honeymoon stage, and you were doing everything you could to try to impress this girl, try to win the girl over. If you have that mentality 20 years, 30 years down the road, I mean, I'm not there, so I can't speak on it, but chances are you will have a good marriage. I've been in the game, the marriage game, for, like I said, going on 8 years, and I try to impress Cassie, if not every day, at least once a week or once a month. So what does that actually look like when I'm trying to impress her? One, like I said, act as if you were dating. What were things that you did when you were dating? You probably sent her sweet texts. You probably surprised her, right? That's a huge one. If you can do acts of service with like surprises. I remember when Cassie and I were dating, we would, like, she was busy in nursing school, and there was times where I would like sneak her, like go steal her keys. This is going to sound really bad, but steal her keys, take her car, go fill it up with gas, bring it back, wash it, and then that way when she left, she'd have a clean car, full tank of gas, like before she went to nursing school the next day. Like, again, but I was so intentional of like, I want to impress this girl. And what happens, and it happens to me, trust me, I'm just as guilty as it, when you have your spouse and you're like, oh, I'm good, I got a ring, I'm content, you start not being intentional, and you start losing that I'm trying to impress her. That is something that, like I said, I have to be very intentional about. Some of you guys are like, well, how do you, like, I don't think that way. There's a trick that I learned that you can actually find out how to be a sweet husband. All right, you ready for this? You got to do something that's kind of hard to do, and I kind of already mentioned it already, but you got to listen. I promise, if you listen, there is like little gems that they will drop, and if you listen, you actually don't have to be creative. You just have to listen and then take away that like suffering. So for instance, the other day we just finished dinner, and Cassie mentions, like, she sees that we're almost out of ground turkey. She's like, ugh, I gotta cook ground turkey. Boom, as soon as she says that, I make a little mental note. That's what this is. I'm making a mental note. Act like it's a chalkboard, you're making a mental note. Boom, got one, right? Later on in that night, I'm laying in bed, she's about to hop in bed, and she says, oh man, I gotta get gas. She's telling me about her day tomorrow. And she's like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. Oh man, I gotta get gas. Boom, mental note. So that's 2 mental notes right here. I'm taking mental notes of things she doesn't want to do. I didn't get creative. I literally just heard something she didn't want to do, and I was like, I'm gonna take that off her plate. So the next morning, wake up to work out, 4 o'clock, I steal her car again. I really just realized that I steal Cassie's car a lot. Anyway, I take the keys. I also learned something. I drove to the gas station at 4:30 in the morning. When I went to pump gas at 4:30 in the morning, there was a message on the pump that said basically like, pumps are not up right now. They're not working. And I don't know if that's just because it's 4:30 in the morning and there wasn't someone in the store, but I'm like, I'm up before the gas station. So I had to drive back, kind of continue my workout. At 5:30, drove back, got her gas, pumped it, left it in the car. Or left it in the garage so that when she would wake up, she would have gas. She wouldn't have to worry about that. Then I go inside. As I'm making my breakfast, I see the ground turkey. I have another mental note though, right? So I pull out the ground turkey as I'm making my breakfast. I brown the ground turkey, clean it up, put it in the fridge, clean up the entire kitchen, boom, go to work, okay? It didn't make my day any harder. I just had to be a little bit more intentional. And it didn't take much of effort on my part. The hardest part was I was listening to her the night before. Now, did it cost me any money? Absolutely not. But it's, again, I'm trying to impress her as if we were dating. So when it comes to your spouse, your wife, chances are, and I see it with Cassie all the time, look at your wife like every once in a while, and I guarantee she's just sitting there. And Cassie has this one look that when she has it, I know she's going through a checklist in her mind. And that checklist sometimes never even shuts off. Like when she's sleeping, she's going through the checklist of all the things she wants to do in the morning. If you can find like 1 or 2 things of those, like I said, like even if it's just straightening up the kitchen or unloading the dishwasher or doing things of like that, taking it off her plate. When you do that, this is ways that you're like impressing them, costs you no money, it's not a lot of effort, but the reward that you get is well worth it, because it's like you're putting money, you're depositing into your marriage. And you have like a bank account with your marriage. If you're never depositing it and you try to like withdraw, obviously you're going to go negative. But if you put in these little like deposits every once in a while, you're going to have a giant savings when it comes to your marriage. So always try to impress her. And the easiest way to do that is just listen to her. That's the easiest thing. Another way that, again, some people might think this, you don't need to do this, but I try to impress Cassie physically, right? Like, obviously I love working out. I work out 7 days a week. It's what I do. But at the same time, like, there's still times that I try to like keep my physique a certain way so that I can have my wife, when she looks at me, still find me attractive, right? Like, I think you still need to do that. Like, that whole dad bod thing is an absolute joke. You should never, ever have a dad bod for your own mental health and your physical health. But you should be trying to impress your wife. You should be trying to win your wife over every single day. And I've said this before, and I'll say it till the day I die. The most selfish thing you can do as a husband or a father is not take care of your health. Because if something happens to you because you were selfish and put your needs, meaning your food needs, your lazy needs, your sitting around needs first, and you die, the people that you screwed over are your wife and your kids. So that may piss a couple of you guys off. I don't really care. The most selfish thing you can do as a husband or a father is not take care of your health. So stop being selfish, get your booty in the gym, put down the freaking bonbon, and take care of yourself physically. It will also help you out mentally. It's tip number 3. Tip number 4. This is something I actually like and enjoy doing, so it's not as difficult, but it is difficult because I do it a certain way. So you gotta learn how to communicate. Okay, I love communicating, I love talking. If you can't tell, that's why I got into teaching, because I love communicating, I love talking to people. However, people communicate different. You gotta learn how to communicate with your spouse. Now, luckily, when Cassie and I started dating, we had there was 5 years, I think we were dating for 5 years and then got engaged. That first 5 years, we learned ways to communicate. Now, one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever received when it comes to marriage is from my dad. Shout out to John. He told me when you have a conversation with your wife, never use I think he referred to them as blanket statements, meaning you should never say the words never and always, and I'll explain why. If I'm talking to Cassie and I say, you never do this, right? Like you never put the dishes away, or you never take out the trash, or you never vacuum the house, you never do the laundry. If I say that, as soon as you say the word never, it is a blanket statement. What happens is she hears that one word never, and then she'll come back with, oh really? I never do this? And then she says all the times she's done it. Because I guarantee never is a false statement. Me telling Cassie, you never cook dinner, that's a lie. Does she cook dinner sometimes? Absolutely. But if you say never, it cuts it all out. So you never want to say never or always. Always is just as bad. Like if I say to her, like, you never tell me you appreciate me, that is a bold statement. That is a blanket statement and a lie. She's going to hear never and she's going to fire back. As opposed to if I said, hey, recently you haven't really been doing this. That's not offensive. That's not an aggressive statement. That's a statement that there's probably truth to it. I've said this before, and like this is why I have issues with people that are like extremists on both sides of everything. Or if you said teachers don't care about students, I would take that offensive. If you said some teachers don't care about students, I'd say you're absolutely right. If you said all nurses are terrible, I would take that offensive because my wife's a nurse. If you said some nurses are terrible, I'd be like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Because some is pretty much the truth. So when you're talking to your wife about something, if she's doing something that you don't like her doing, do not say never or always, because it will just start a fight and you'll start arguing about something that's not even true. But if you say, hey, lately you've been doing this, or recently you've been doing this, or I really enjoyed when you used to do this, but you haven't done this lately, that's completely different. Now you're having a conversation. But if you say never and always, chances are it's going to lead to an argument. Also, what I had to realize is there would be times where Cassie was talking to me and I was 100% in the wrong, but if she seemed mad, I would fire back, okay? If she came off as if I was hurting her and she was sad, it completely changed my demeanor, because then I felt terrible, right? Like I never want to obviously do something to make Cassie mad. Does it happen? Obviously, I'm human. I don't make the best decisions, but if I do something and I feel confident in what I'm doing, but I could tell that it really hurt her, I'm not going to do it again. It's just the way it is. Like mad and sad are a completely different mindset, and you got to have that mindset when you're talking to your spouse or your wife. If I'm talking to Cassie and I say, it makes me mad when you do this, or honestly, when you do this, it hurts me, they could lead to the same thing, right? Like if I say, it makes me mad that when you go out with your friends, which I don't say that, but if it makes you mad that you go out with your friends and you're never home. Mad is kind of aggressive, as opposed to if I tell her like, hey, lately I've been kind of feeling hurt when you go out with your friends because I'd like to spend time with you. Now, does it make me mad if she goes out with her friends because I want to spend time with her? Absolutely. But by saying mad, it could lead the conversation a completely different route. So you got to learn to say, lately you've been doing this, and honestly it's been kind of hurting me because I would like to do this with you, or I've been wanting to do that, whatever it may be. Hurt is completely different than mad. And this is another, like I said, another key point when it comes to learning how to communicate with your wife. Know when she's mad and know when she's sad. It will make a world of difference. Oh, last thing, and this one is tough because as the husband, I feel like it is our role to never let our wife know we are worried. When you are married, you're going to have, you guys are going to go through struggles, whether it be like struggles with children, struggles with having children, struggles with money, struggles with jobs, struggles with your wife's worried about something, whatever it may be. One thing that I think is very hard as a husband, you can't let them know that you're worried. Like there's been times where Cassie's like, nervous about getting a job, or we're stressing about money because of, you can never let her know you're worried. There was, when Cassie and I were struggling to have Adeline, there was times in my life I was like super worried, like, what am I gonna do if we never have a child? Like, how am I gonna like handle that? When Cassie, this is what she really wants, what if I didn't even want to think of that. However, when Cassie's saying that and I could tell that she's worried, I'm not going to feed into it. I'm never going to let her know that I'm worried. I'm not going to say, you know what, I am really worried about, like, as a husband, you have to encourage them. Like, you have to find the positive in a negative situation, whether it's financial, whether it's children, whether it's work related. Your job as a husband is to never let her know you're worried. And what I've found is if you speak it enough, you start to believe it. So there was times, I'm not going to lie, and Cassie knows this, that I doubted if we were going to be able to have Adeline. And it absolutely sucked. So I would try to speak positivity to her, out into the universe. I'd pray about it. I would do all those things. And the more I did that, I would start believing it. But there was times that when I was saying it to her, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I believe this. But as I said it, I myself started to feel better and feel, hey, this is all going to work out. And when it comes to, like I said, if your wife's worried about getting a job or something, and even if you doubt it, you cannot show her that you're doubting it. You got to speak it. You got to be that rock. You got to be that person that she can go to when she's having a bad day or she's having self-doubt, and build it up and let her know, hey, it's all going to work out. Like, that's probably one of the hardest things, I think, of being a husband is you can't show them that you're worried. Now, it's kind of a different topic because there's times where I'm worried about something, but like Cassie doesn't know yet, so I'll talk to her about it. Once I see her, if she starts worrying about it, then I got to switch my role. But there's sometimes that I go to her about stuff that I'm worried about, and I could tell she's not worried about it, and it helps me out. So it does go vice versa. I'm not saying that I don't worry about anything and I'm just this tough macho man. Like, no, trust me. There's things that I stress about, but if your wife's stressing about something, I think you gotta put your needs and your feelings back and take care of your wife first. That is my advice, and at least how I go about that. So tip number 4, learn how to communicate with your wife. That was like a big one. All right, last tip on how to not be your average husband. And this is something that I notice a lot amongst men, and this is something that I do not agree with. You have to praise your wife all the time, especially when they're not around. I see this amongst men, husbands, all the time. Even when I was dating and people with their girlfriends and everything, there's something that I don't understand is when guys get around each other, they start venting about their... Now, I'm not saying everybody. I know a couple phenomenal husbands that I've never heard them say anything bad about their wife. But there's way more husbands that I know that I have heard them say multiple things that are bad about their wife. And I never, ever agree with that. If you are married to this person, someone that you should cherish, someone that you should be grateful for, someone that you should appreciate, and I guarantee someone that you worked to try to impress and marry her in the first place, why are you sitting there bad-mouthing her? Now, don't get me wrong. I know every wife, including my wife, is not perfect. Do they have things that they do that you may not agree with or you may not like it sometimes? Absolutely. Do I do things like that? Absolutely. I know there's things that I do that Cassie doesn't love all the time. That's how a marriage works. However, if you have an issue with your spouse or they do something that you don't really like, you should talk to them about it. I don't think you should ever go behind their back and badmouth them and say, oh, my wife does this, or I hate it when my wife does this. Does she know that? And someone will be like, oh yeah, I'll tell her all the time, she don't even care. In that situation, then I think you guys need to work on step number 4. Are you communicating enough? Now, there is times that I will say something that Cassie does, like around other people, and I'm usually laughing about it. Like, Cassie is OCD when it comes to cleaning. I thought I was OCD when it comes to cleaning. This girl is on a whole nother level. However, does it bother me? Absolutely not. It is Cassie. So I will mention things like that to people, but I will never say something about Cassie when she's not around, like, oh, I absolutely hate when Cassie does this. And I don't think you should have anything that your spouse does that you absolutely hate. I can't think of anything that... Yeah, I'm going to go 100% in on that one. You should never say you absolutely hate something your wife does. Because I can't think of anything I absolutely hate that Cassie does. Yep, can't think of anything. Anyways, something I take pride in is, and I make it a point, especially when I'm around the opposite sex, like if I meet a coworker for the first time and she's obviously a female, or I get introduced, one of the first things I like to do, and I don't even just actually do it around females, is somehow within like the first time meeting, I'm gonna drop a reference to my wife and my daughter. And it's gonna be a very good reference, and I'm gonna let that person know, hey, I'm crazy about my wife, I'm crazy about my daughter, I'm a family man. So kind of put it out there to make them feel, it's like, for instance, if you go and the first conversation you have with someone, you let them know what political party you have, or you let them know that you're religious or atheist, whatever. As soon as you drop that kind of puts a reference point that they know, okay, I'm not going to say this around them then, right? Like, if it comes up that I don't drink, then people will usually make a reference like, oh, we're not going to invite him out when we go out because they know I'm not into that. I take that same like point and same viewpoint. I take that same idea when it comes to dropping information that I'm happily married and I have a daughter that I'm crazy about. I try to drop that within the first meeting so that they know. First of all, don't talk about like, oh, we're gonna go out and get some girls. I could care less about that. I had a teacher do that, and like he did it after I was just talking about how I was gonna hang out with my wife and daughter. So it was just kind of awkward. If you're into that, cool, go do that. But I don't want to have that conversation. So, like I said, this is something that I've take a lot of pride in. And I've actually had people say, oh, you could tell he's crazy about his wife, or you could tell he's in love with his daughter. Like, that's something that I like when I'm very confident in that. Like, I like when I hear that. Like, that is something I take pride in when people say, like, oh, dude, when I come around people at work, they usually don't even ask how I'm doing. They ask how my daughter's doing because I'm always talking about my daughter, and they always ask how Cassie's doing because I'm always talking about Cassie. And that's something that I really enjoy and I like doing. So when it comes to being around other people, people should know that you're crazy about your wife, and you should never badmouth your wife. But that is about it when it comes to my top 5 things on how you could become not your average husband. If you are out there and you have a spouse, and if you have anything that you feel like could be added to this, please comment below. Because like I said, when I was thinking of like my top, I literally like was like, oh, I wonder what other people thought, you know, what makes a great husband. Talk to your spouse about it. Talk to your wife about it. That would be a great place to start, is ask her, hey, what do you think would make a great husband? Say, I watched this video. These are his 5. What do you think? If they say I'm crazy, that's why you need to have a conversation with them so that you guys can come up with your own top 5. But please comment below if you guys have any things like, hey, I like when my husband does this, or hey, I'm a husband and when I do this, my wife absolutely loves it. Like, please comment below. I'm gonna, like I said, this is the series of Know Your Role. I have a couple of other ones that I'm gonna be talking about and putting out within the next couple weeks, just because I'm trying to get back into this D.B.A. podcast. If I have content, I'll put it out. And I have some content because I have some things I want to talk to you guys about. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you guys can see any upcoming podcasts that will be coming out. Comment below. Like I said, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Share with anybody that you think is not your average husband, or maybe share if you think your husband should be watching this. So anyways, hope you guys have a blessed rest of your day, and you already know the motto: stay happy, stay healthy, and above all, don't be average. I will catch you guys in the next one.